Going back now to the main directory, we see that on my computer CRUD and CRUD times 2 are right next to one another, and CRUD times 2 is very similar in the file names that exist, but the content of the files is a little bit more elaborate, especially the models file. Let's take a look at it now. You can see that there's three types of models. The notes class has not changed. Now we have a new notebooks class that has a user in it, and we have a class called which is transactions, which was created to deal with some error messages. I forgot to look at this file before, called main.py. This file is like a digital switchboard between the Python code and the HTML code. To understand this, let's look back at the application CRUD, and in particular in the address field on the browser. Notice that there is nothing after the final slash in the browser here because we're in the read or the main page area. But now when we were in the edit area, notice that after the slash the word edit and a number appears. Those two examples correspond to the first and the third examples on this page. When there was just a slash, we want to use the main page subroutine. When there's a slash edit and a note number, we want to use the edit note part of Python. In order to more clarify the difference between CRUD and CRUD times 2, I've put a split panel here of the two views files on the screen. On the top is the CRUD times 2 for edit note, and on the bottom is CRUD for edit note. Notice the blinking part of the screen on the top, how that get from the database takes both notebook information and notes information, whereas on the bottom half of the screen the database get only requires the notes. Using that same split screen idea now for the main.py, the top screen is for CRUD times 2 and the bottom one is for CRUD. And you can see how much more complicated the top one is because of the need to work on both notebooks and on notes. Now we're looking at views.py for the CRUD times 2. I want to show you a trick for debugging. Do you see how the import logging line is blinking? That's a new import that I added so that I could add printout to just show in the Appengine logbook. Now I'm going to show you an example of it being employed. Again, on the blinking line in the middle, I'm going to print out the value of the notebook ID and a label called Create Notebook to tell me that I'm in the Create Notebook part of the code. That's all that it takes. Now I'm going to move over to the Appengine application to show you where that information will print out. Okay, when we're here, we want to click on this logbook to see what shows, and that's what shows. At the top of the page, we see a lot of information, and then down at the bottom is where we would see that new information printed out if we ran the program. This is an incredibly important place to look for errors. The error you see there is not a bad error, not a fatal error, and I don't know how to get rid of it. You will also want to try out this SDK Console, which I'm going to click on now. And you see here you can look at your data store information. There's only one data store here. It's the Notes data store. But what's really valuable, I think, is this interactive console. This is where you can do trial runs of your Python code without having to actually run it in the application. I also want to put in a plug for this location called stackoverflow.com. They have terrific experts for helping you with Python and all sorts of things like this. What I normally do is go here to the search part, and I tend to prefix my search with some tags to limit it. And then let me show you as an example. I had a question about leap year coding just a while ago, and so I typed that in, and the results are very interesting. They weren't able to find many questions with those words in it, but they told me that 3 of the questions had been answered that in this area. So when I click on that, it turns out that the answer to my question was one of those very 3. You can see here that this particular these are the 3 that they're talking about. The top one is the one that I found best. It had 2 answers. It had a positive vote for the question, or maybe that's for one of the answers. I'm not sure. I think it's for the question. And so I click on that, and sure enough, the one was for how well the question was asked and how meaningful the question was. And then there's a little bit of back and forth there. And then here's the first answer. It was quite elaborate. And this, I don't know where the second answer is. Maybe it was erased. This is kind of like a wiki. So anyhow, that's a wonderful resource to have for questions you have. What I recommend you do is, if you get any errors in your log, that you copy and paste those errors into the questions here on Stack Overflow, and you're very likely to find an answer right there. Well, that's all I have time for now. I hope this inspires you to try some of this code.